This case takes us back to January 13th, 1999 in Baltimore County, Maryland. Hae Min Lee, an 18-year-old high school senior at Woodlawn High School, vanished under mysterious circumstances that Wednesday afternoon, setting off a chain of events that would shock the nation for years to come. On that day, Lee attended her classes as usual. She was last seen leaving school at approximately 2:15 p.m., just after the final bell had gone off. She had a busy schedule planned for the afternoon. She was supposed to pick up her younger cousin from elementary school and then head to her after-school job at a LensCrafters optical store in a nearby mall. However, Lee never arrived at either location. Her family became concerned when she failed to pick up her cousin, which was highly uncharacteristic of the responsible teenager. By 3:15 p.m., she had missed her scheduled arrival time at the daycare center where her cousin was waiting. This absence immediately raised red flags for her family, who knew Lee to be punctual and reliable. As the afternoon wore on and there was still no sign of the girl, her family's worry intensified. Around 5 p.m., her family took the step of contacting the police to report her missing. Officers began by calling Lee's various friends in an attempt to locate her. Among those contacted was her ex-boyfriend Adnan Said, who was 17 years old at the time. When questioned, Said stated that he had last seen Lee when classes ended at school. This initial statement would later become a crucial point in the investigation and subsequent legal proceedings. Officials also visited LensCrafter and spoke to the manager, who confirmed that Lee never showed up nor called in advance to declare her absence. By January 14th, in the early morning hours, the police had managed to reach Don, Lee's new boyfriend. Don informed the authorities that he had last spoken to her on January 12th, the day before her disappearance, and had no information about her current whereabouts. As days passed without any sign of Lee, the search intensified. By January 15th, local hospitals had been contacted and the surrounding area had been searched for Lee's car, a 1998 Nissan Sentra. For nearly 4 weeks, her fate remained unknown, leaving her family, friends, and the community in a state of anguished uncertainty. The breakthrough in the case came on February 9th, 1999, when a shocking discovery was made in a large urban park in Baltimore City called Leakin Park. On that day, a man named Alonzo Sellers was in the park when he stumbled upon a disturbing sight. While relieving himself in a secluded area of the park, he discovered a partially buried body. He immediately alerted the authorities, setting in motion the next phase of the investigation. The park was known locally as a place where bodies were sometimes dumped. The location of Lee's body, partially concealed in a shallow grave, suggested a deliberate attempt to hide evidence of a crime. Upon arrival at the scene, law enforcement officials began examining and recovering the body. The remains were soon identified as those of Lee, bringing a tragic end to the search for the missing teenager. The discovery of her body transformed the case from a missing person investigation into a homicide. The autopsy revealed that Lee had died by manual strangulation, providing investigators with crucial information about the nature of the crime. Just a few days later, an anonymous caller suggested that the police should focus their investigation on Adnan Said, Lee's ex-boyfriend. As the investigation continued, detectives began to piece together Lee's last known movements and interactions. They learned that on the day of her disappearance, she had attended her classes as usual at Woodlawn High School. Several of her classmates reported seeing her at the end of the school day, with the last confirmed sighting at around 2:15 p.m. as she left the school premises. The police investigation took a significant turn when they began questioning Jay Wilds, a friend of Said's. Jay provided a statement to the police that would become central to the case against Lee's ex. According to Jay, Said had expressed intentions of killing Lee and had enlisted his help in burying the body after confessing to the murder on January 13th. Jay claimed that Said had shown him Lee's body in the trunk of her car at the Best Buy parking lot. This account, if true, placed Said directly at the scene of the crime and implicated him in the murder. However, it's important to note that Jay's involvement and testimony would later become one of the most contentious aspects of the case. His account of the events changed several times during the investigation and subsequent trials, raising questions about his credibility and the reliability of his testimony. On February 16, 1999, Baltimore police applied for cell phone records for a phone belonging to Side. These records would later play a crucial role in the prosecution's case against him, although their reliability would also be called into question in later years. The investigation culminated on February 28th when Side was arrested in the early hours of the morning at his home. He was charged with first-degree murder despite being only 17 years old at the time. Side's family hired defense attorney Christina Gutierrez to represent him. Gutierrez was a well-known defense attorney in Baltimore at the time, with a reputation for being a fierce advocate for her clients. However, her handling of the case would later become a point of controversy and a key factor in subsequent appeals. The first trial began in December 1999, but it was short-lived. During a sidebar discussion between Gutierrez and Judge William Quarles, the judge made a comment that Gutierrez interpreted as accusing her of lying. Unaware that jurors were within earshot, she vocally objected to this perceived accusation. When it became clear that jurors had overheard this exchange, the judge had no choice but to declare a mistrial. This mistrial, while a setback for the prosecution, may have been a missed opportunity for Side. According to an affidavit from Douglas Colbert, who represented Side at his bail hearing, several jurors from this first trial indicated they were leaning towards acquittal based on the evidence presented up to that point. Specifically, 4 jurors stated they would not have returned a guilty verdict, a 5th indicated she would have voted not guilty, and 2 others expressed difficulty believing the state's case. The second trial began in January 2000 and lasted 6 weeks. This trial would prove to be more challenging for the defense. The prosecution, led by Assistant State Attorney Kevin Urich, presented a case that relied heavily on 2 key elements: the testimony of Jay Wilds and cell phone tower evidence. Just like we already went over, Jay provided a damaging testimony against his friend. Jay added that he and Side spent several hours driving around, attempting to establish an alibi before ultimately stashing away the body. The cell phone records obtained by officials corroborated the testimony. On February 25, 2000, after a 2-hour deliberation, the jury found Side guilty of first-degree murder, kidnapping, false imprisonment, and robbery. He remained calm as the verdict was read, reportedly saying, "I'll be all right. I have faith in the Lord. I know I didn't kill her. The Lord knows I didn't kill her." The sentencing hearing took place on June 6, 2000. In an emotional testimony, Lee's mother spoke about the impact of her daughter's death. "I would like to forgive her killer, but as of now, I just don't know how I could," she said. "When I die, my daughter will die with me. As long as I live, my daughter is buried in my heart." In several reports, it was stated that she nearly collapsed as she stepped off the witness stand, and that her sobs could be heard from outside the courtroom. Judge Wanda Hurd sentenced Side to life in prison plus 30 years. In May 2010, he sought post-conviction relief, alleging ineffective assistance of counsel. Side argued that Gutierrez had failed to investigate an alibi witness, Asia McClain, who maintained she was talking with Side in the library at the exact time that prosecutors said he attacked Lee. In January 2014, the petition was denied by Justice Martin Welch, who found that the failure to call McClain as a witness was strategic rather than an act of incompetence. In March 2022, a joint motion was filed by Side's defense attorney and the Baltimore City State's attorney requesting new DNA testing on Lee's clothing, shoes, and kit, which had never been tested for DNA. In September 2022, prosecutors filed a motion to vacate the conviction, citing several reasons including Brady violations, new evidence, alternative suspects, and concerns about cell phone records. On September 19, 2022, Circuit Court Judge Melissa Finn vacated Side's conviction, and he was released from prison the same day. Prosecutors subsequently filed to drop all charges against him. Young Lee, Hae Min Lee's brother, appealed the decision to vacate the conviction, arguing that he had not been given sufficient notice of the hearing and adequate opportunity to participate. On March 28, 2023, an appellate court reinstated Side's conviction in a 2-1 decision. The court found that Young Lee was not given sufficient notice to attend the hearing in person and that prosecutors failed to, quote, state in detail the reasons for throwing out Side's conviction. However, the court acknowledged that Judge Finn had given young Lee the opportunity to address the court during the hearing. Side appealed the case to the Maryland Supreme Court, which initially stayed the reinstatement pending the resolution of the appeal. However, on August 30th, 2024, the Maryland Supreme Court reinstated his murder conviction in a 4-3 decision. The court also ordered a redo of the vacatur hearing that led to his release, with Side remaining free from prison pending the new hearing's outcome. Taylor Parker's early life started in a complex web of family dynamics, personal struggles, and a pattern of deception that would ultimately lead to tragic consequences. Born in 1993, Parker's childhood and adolescence set the stage for the troubled adult she would become. She grew up in a household that, from the outside, may have appeared relatively normal. However, as is often the case, the reality behind closed doors was far more complicated. Her parents, Shona and Mark Morton, went through a divorce when Taylor was between 10 and 12 years old, with her younger brother Zach being around 8 at the time. This significant life event likely had a profound impact on Taylor's emotional development and her perception of family stability. During her early school years, she showed signs of what could be interpreted as attention-seeking behavior or possibly early manifestations of more serious issues. In particular, her 3rd grade year stands out as a turning point. While she had been doing fine academically in 2nd grade, Taylor began complaining of stomach issues upon entering 3rd grade. Interestingly, these health complaints would mysteriously resolve on weekends but resurface on school days. This pattern suggests that Taylor may have been experiencing school-related anxiety or using physical complaints as a means to gain attention or avoid school. Taylor's mother and other family members quickly noticed this pattern. They concluded that the issues were likely related to her relationship with her 3rd grade teacher. According to her mother's testimony, they believed that this particular teacher wasn't providing Taylor with the kind of feedback or attention she craved. This early incident is noteworthy as it may have been one of the first instances where Taylor learned to use physical complaints or fabricated health issues to manipulate her environment or gain sympathy from others. As Taylor progressed through her school years, she became involved in competitive cheerleading during middle school. This activity provided her with a sense of belonging and achievement, as well as an outlet for her energy and desire for attention. Taylor's relationship with her father, Mark, appears to have been particularly problematic. Her brother Zach's testimony painted a picture of a father who was largely absent from his children's lives unless he needed something from them. This pattern of conditional attention and affection from a parent can have profound effects on a child's emotional development and their ability to form healthy relationships later in life. It's possible that Taylor's later behavior in romantic relationships, particularly her intense focus on securing and maintaining male attention, may have roots in this early paternal relationship. As Taylor entered her teenage years, her pattern of using health issues or fabricated problems to gain attention and sympathy seemed to escalate. While specific details from this period are limited, the testimony from her later relationships suggests that this behavior became a well-established part of her daily life. Taylor's first marriage to Tommy Way Casey resulted in the birth of 2 children. This early entry into motherhood and marriage suggests that Taylor may have been seeking stability and a sense of purpose through these traditional roles. However, the events that followed indicate that she struggled with the realities of these responsibilities. In 2014, at the age of 21, Taylor underwent a tubal ligation procedure. This decision to permanently prevent future pregnancies at such a young age was considered unusual and may indicate that she was experiencing significant stress or uncertainty about her role as a mother. However, the emotional impact of this decision appears to have been profound. According to testimony, Taylor was extremely upset about the procedure, suggesting that she may have felt conflicted about her choice or that she didn't fully understand the long-term implications of the decision. The following year, in 2015, she underwent a medically necessary hysterectomy. This procedure, which resulted in the complete removal of her uterus, marked a definitive end to her ability to bear children. The psychological impact of this surgery on a 22-year-old woman had a profound effect on her mentally. It's worth noting that these medical procedures occurred within the context of Taylor's first marriage. The stress of young parenthood, coupled with these significant medical interventions, likely put a strain on the relationship. While we don't have specific details about the dissolution of this marriage, it's clear that it ended sometime sometime before Taylor entered into her second marriage with Hunter Parker. This second marriage to Hunter Parker was another troubled chapter in Taylor's life. During this relationship, Taylor's pattern of deception and manipulation became more pronounced. According to Hunter, Taylor did not disclose her inability to have children until after they were married. This omission of such crucial information suggests a deep-seated fear of rejection and a willingness to deceive to maintain a relationship. Throughout her marriage to Hunter, Taylor claimed to suffer from a variety of medical problems. She even went so far as to fake seizures, apparently in an attempt to keep the relationship intact. Taylor's desperation to have a child, particularly a daughter, became a dominant theme in her life following her hysterectomy. She told friends that she had been diagnosed with uterine cancer and used this fabrication as an explanation for her inability to conceive. In a particularly manipulative move, she offered two of her friends $100K USD each to act as surrogates for her. Neither friend accepted this offer, but nevertheless, it demonstrates the length that Taylor was willing to go. Taylor's lies about pregnancy and childbirth grew increasingly elaborate around this period. She told people she had miscarried twins and lost another daughter immediately after birth. She even created a story about successfully hiring a surrogate, only to claim that Hunter had cheated on her with the surrogate. The end of Taylor's second marriage occurred in April 2019. Within weeks of the separation, she began dating another man named Wade Griffin. This quick transition into a new relationship suggests that Taylor struggled with being alone and may have viewed romantic relationships as a primary source of validation and stability in her life. As she entered into her new relationship, her pattern of deception reached new heights. She quickly began to spin an elaborate web of lies seemingly designed to secure Griffin's affection and commitment. One of her most significant deceptions was claiming to be an heiress with nearly $5 million incoming for the couple to buy a large farm. Parallel to this, she created an intricate story about her mother stealing her inheritance and hiring a hitman to kill Taylor and Wade. She even went so far as to claim that her own private detective had foiled the plot. In January 2020, Taylor told Griffin that she was pregnant. She provided a due date of September 22, 2020. This announcement came just months after they had begun dating in 2019. But of course, Griffin had no idea that Taylor was actually incapable of conceiving. To sell the lie of her pregnancy, Taylor employed a variety of tactics. She reused sonogram images from her previous pregnancies to prove she was expecting. She would show these to Griffin and others as evidence of her pregnancy's progress. She even faked urine tests to show positive pregnancy results. The exact method she used to falsify these tests is unclear, but it was convincing enough to fool those around her. To avoid medical appointments that would have exposed her lie, Taylor created additional fake stories. She claimed there were bomb threats to clinics where she was supposed to have checkups. She even made up fictitious family emergencies to postpone or cancel medical visits. As her fake due date approached and people expected to see more obvious signs of pregnancy, Taylor claimed she had undergone a tummy tuck surgery. She used this as an explanation for why she wasn't showing as much as might be expected late in pregnancy. The deception was so thorough that it convinced not just Griffin, but many others in their social circle. Griffin's mother stated that she had assumed Taylor would eventually fake a miscarriage to end the charade. This suggests that while some may have had suspicions, the extent of Taylor's deception was enough to keep most people from directly confronting her. However, cracks began to appear in Taylor's elaborate facade. In mid-September, just weeks before her supposed due date, Taylor's ex-husband, Tommy, took action. He anonymously texted Griffin multiple times over several days, revealing that Taylor had undergone a hysterectomy and was using sonograms from her older children to fake her current pregnancy. This revelation set off a chain of events that would lead to tragedy. Instead of coming clean, Taylor's actions became more desperate and focused. Her online searches in the days following these texts backed this up. She began researching places where pregnant women might gather, looking up out of hospital birth protocols and studying the workings of a C-section procedure. Perhaps most chillingly, Taylor admitted to forensic psychologists during the investigation that she had been tracking and stalking a pregnant patient outside a clinic in Paris, Texas. She had learned this woman's patterns and considered her as a potential victim before ultimately targeting Reagan Simmons Hancock. Reagan was a vibrant young woman born on November 14, 1998 in Hope, Arkansas. At just 21 years old, she had already built a life filled with love, family, and promise for the future. Friends and family described her as someone who could light up a room with her presence. She had a natural ability to make others feel comfortable and valued, a trait that would follow her throughout her life. Growing up in a close-knit community, she was involved in various activities and was known for her willingness to help others. In September 2019, Reagan married her high school sweetheart, Homer Hancock. The couple were already parents to a 3-year-old daughter named Kinley. Reagan embraced motherhood with the same enthusiasm and love that characterized everything she did in life. She was a devoted mother, always putting her daughter's needs first and creating a warm, loving home environment. At the time of the tragic events that would unfold, Reagan was 34 weeks pregnant with her second daughter. The couple had already chosen a name for their unborn child, Braxlyn Sage. The anticipation of her arrival had filled the household with excitement. Reagan had been diligently preparing for the new addition to their family, setting up a nursery and eagerly sharing updates about her pregnancy with friends and family on social media. Reagan and Taylor met through social media. Their relationship, while not close, was friendly enough that Taylor had even taken Reagan's engagement and wedding photos. This connection highlights the shocking betrayal that would ultimately lead to her death. In the days leading up to the crime, Reagan had been going about her life as usual, balancing her role as a mother with preparations for her second daughter's arrival. She had regular checkups scheduled and was in good health with no complications in her pregnancy. Friends who saw her during this time described her as glowing and excited. On October 9th, 2020, the case comes to a peak in New Boston, Texas. The day began like any other for Reagan. She was at home with her 3-year-old daughter going about her morning routine. Unknown to her, Taylor had been meticulously planning this day, having researched various aspects of childbirth and fetal abduction in the preceding weeks. At approximately 7:30 a.m., Taylor arrived at Reagan's home. Phone records indicate that there was a brief exchange of text messages between the two women between 7:22 a.m. and 7:52 a.m. What happened next was nothing short of unimaginable violence. Taylor launched a frenzied attack on Reagan, ultimately subduing her and ending her life. Reagan fought back fiercely, evidenced by her numerous defensive wounds on her hands and arms, which dislocated one of Taylor's fingers. Prosecutors believe that Taylor used a mason jar filled with sand, a memento from Reagan's own wedding, to strike her repeatedly. Following this, Taylor proceeded to strangle Reagan. However, due to immense resistance, Taylor then resorted to stabbing Reagan over and over. The medical examiner's report revealed over 100 stab wounds across her body. The most horrific part of the attack came next. With Reagan still alive and fighting for her life, Taylor began to cut into her abdomen. Prosecutors later emphasized this point, stating, "The pain Reagan must have felt when Taylor started cutting her abdomen hip to hip is indescribable." She then proceeded to remove Reagan's unborn child from her womb. The baby was then removed along with the placenta. Even after this horrific act, Taylor's attack did not cease. Realizing that Reagan was still alive, Taylor continued her assault. As prosecutor Lauren Richards later stated in court, when Taylor had the baby and Reagan was still alive, that's when Taylor started slashing and cutting. She can't leave her alive. It was no quick death. She just kept cutting her. I guess Reagan would not die fast enough for Taylor to get out of there and get on with her plans. In a final gruesome act, Taylor took the scalpel she had used to remove the baby and ended Reagan's life. At approximately 9:37 a.m., less than 2 hours after the estimated time of the murder, Taylor was seen driving erratically by police in Idabel, Oklahoma, about 12 miles northwest of the crime scene in New Boston. When officers pulled her over, they encountered a shocking and disturbing scene. Taylor claimed she had just given birth in her car. She was holding a newborn baby in her lap with the umbilical cord still attached and appearing to come out of her pants. The officers, faced with what appeared to be a medical emergency, quickly arranged for Taylor and the baby to be taken to McCurtain Memorial Hospital. It was here that Taylor's scheme began to unravel rapidly. Medical staff at the hospital quickly determined that Parker had not given birth. An external examination revealed she did not have a uterus, and an internal exam showed neither blood in her vaginal canal nor the presence of a cervix. Blood tests confirmed she had no pregnancy hormones in her system. Despite the mounting evidence against her, Taylor continued to insist she had given birth. She even went so far as to claim that Reagan had asked her to cut the baby out after a physical altercation in a futile attempt to justify her actions. This claim would later be thoroughly debunked by the evidence and Taylor's own conflicting statements. While she was being examined at the hospital, the baby was given emergency care. Tragically, the infant had been deprived of oxygen for too long and had suffered extensive brain damage. Despite the efforts of medical staff, Braxlin was taken off life support and declared dead at 1:22 p.m. on October 9, 2020, just hours after being violently taken from her mother's womb. Meanwhile, back in New Boston, a horrific discovery was about to be made. At approximately 10:20 a.m., Reagan's mother, Jessica Brooks, arrived at her daughter's home. She had been unable to reach her and was concerned. She found Reagan's body on the floor, surrounded by blood. Jessica immediately called emergency services. Law enforcement quickly responded to the scene. They found Reagan's 3-year-old daughter in the house, unharmed physically, but having potentially witnessed some part of the horrific crime against her mother. As investigators began to process the crime scene, they quickly made the connection between the murdered pregnant woman in New Boston and the woman claiming to have just given birth in Idabel. The timeline of events, the proximity of the locations, and the circumstances all pointed to a direct link. DNA testing was quickly ordered to confirm what investigators already suspected, that Taylor Parker was not the biological mother of the baby and that the infant belonged to Reagan. After the connection was confirmed, Taylor was arrested for kidnapping and murder. In the days following her arrest, more details emerged about the elaborate scheme to fake a pregnancy. Investigators uncovered evidence of her extensive online research into faking pregnancy symptoms, obtaining sonograms, and even studying videos of C-sections. The trial began in September 2022 and lasted about 2 months. On October 3, 2022, a Bowie County jury found Taylor Parker guilty of capital murder in the deaths of Reagan and her unborn baby Braxlin. The penalty phase of the trial lasted several weeks, during which both the prosecution and defense presented evidence and testimony to help the jury determine Parker's sentence. On November 9, 2022, after deliberating for just over an hour, the jury sentenced Taylor Parker to death. The jury had to consider whether she would pose a future danger and if there were any mitigating circumstances that would warrant a life sentence instead of the death penalty. They answered affirmatively to the first question and negatively to the second, resulting in the death penalty.